Your defending fathers here on this Wednesday morning. We are joined in this segment again by State Representative Ed McBroom.
Ed, appreciate you being on the show this morning. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about your committee that you, I believe, are the chairman of, Oversight, with regards to the VA home down in Grand Rapids. Can you tell the folks listening a little bit about the history of that situation and what you found out during your Oversight Committee?
Sure. Well, you look at the audits that have been done on this home, not just recently, but even dating back over 10 years. The home has had problems going forward. There's been lots of talk about it, but it never seemed like there was always angst over it, but it never seemed like much got done. And then when we got elected in 2010, when my class came in, there was, okay, we're finally going to fix this place. We're going to get it cleaned up, and let's go at it. And the governor said he was going to, too. He appointed new people in charge, and, I think that kind of, because of term limits, then a lot of us who are new said, oh, okay, well, the governor's put new people in there. We got to give them time. They can't just fix it overnight. So that kind of delayed, I think, a lot of the legislature's interaction or intervening as we stood back and said, okay, let's see what the new team can do. Then a new audit was done by the Auditor General, which is an arm of the legislature, and that report came out here in December or January, and it was just egregious what was going on. And I convened hearings. First we did joint hearings with the Senate as well as the House side, and then we've continued on with those hearings in the House side. There's problems, from both the folks who came in as a private contractor, but there's also continuing problems with those who've been the state employees there for many years. It cuts both ways on that front, too. And, one side tries to make it all about one side, and the other side tries to point the finger at the other. But there's obvious fault to go around both ways. And I think my committee came up with, 10 major points that need to be dealt with immediately. And so far, I think we've tackled at least 6 of those, both in reporting requirements back to the legislature, setting that up on a quarterly basis so we don't just sit around and wait to hear from the governor's appointees, but we're mandating reports on a quarterly basis. Line item budgeting was a huge thing that needed to be done, because the legislature would hear problems and say, okay, here's some money, go buy this machine, buy this technology, get this fixed, and then they wouldn't do it. They'd spend the money on something else. So we put it in a line item so they have to spend the money like we tell them to. And then putting an ombudsman in place so the veterans have somebody who doesn't work for the home that they can talk to about problems, somebody who doesn't have to worry about their job being on the line if they report a complaint. These were all some very serious things that should have been done a long time ago, and, I'm sorry that, we kind of waited to verify that they were already being done, and then they weren't, and so now we're having to do them kind of late in the game. But
one of the specific points I want to focus on, because there's been stories out there, people are talking about this with regards to the first congressional race that is currently on. There's 3 Republicans running, Jason Allen, Jack Bergman, and Tom Casperson. And a lot of people have said, certain things that I wanted to get clarification directly from you as somebody involved in the oversight of that home. Said that you mentioned new people were put in place under Governor Snyder. And I know one of the, I believe, new departments, if you will, or the way they structured it, I'm not really sure, but Governor Snyder asked former State Senator Jason Allen from Traverse City to be the head or director of that. What was his involvement from your perspective with regards to this home down in Grand Rapids?
Well, he was the senior deputy director of the department. Was basically in charge of the 2 homes, the one in Grand Rapids and the one up here in the UP. Anytime there was a veterans issue or question, he was there. I remember having him in my office to ask questions about, hey, what's going on? Shouldn't we be doing more about these problems? And just being reassured, hey, we're taking care of it. Things are going to be okay. And then when you'd get a news report, MERS or Gong, where somebody's saying, hey, there's all this turmoil, or, we had people there at the Capitol protesting contracts and stuff. Mr. Allen, I remember, again, came to my office, reassured me that, hey, we got to get through this turmoil, but everything's going to be okay on the other end. We're taking care of the problems. The home is going to be working great. So I don't know what his daily, at the home interactions were, but he was kind of the point person for those of us in the legislature, reassuring us that things were on the right path forward and that we were going to get there. And, I don't know exactly what else to tell you. I mean, I wish that, I could have had him in a committee, if he were still working there, but he wasn't working there anymore. So we didn't get to ask those kind of questions in the committee setting.
Right. Well, one of my points is, though, I understand bureaucracy, and I understand, you have union contract workers and things like that. They had to make some changes, which, that's what Jason mentions on the campaign trail, is that they got rid of the union workers and somewhat, I guess, maybe privatized it or whatever. How exactly did things change that way that would have hopefully made things better?
Yeah, so there were a lot of there's CNAs there, certified nursing assistants, and so that group of workers, and they were unionized. I believe they worked with AFSCME, state employees. They were removed, and a private contractor was hired to bring in its own employees. And the interactions, the interactions between them and the rest of the staff at the home went very, very poorly. And the contractor did not keep up their end of the bargain either. And what our audit showed was that there was a tremendous lack of oversight going on, that these people were falsifying reports, and then nobody was checking up on it. Nobody was auditing them internally to make sure the job was being done. Complaints from veterans weren't being heard or listened to. And when we started having some legislators go to the home to poke around at this, as I know, whether it was Rep. Barrett this term or Rep. Hughes or Rep. Brinks in previous terms, there was always a lot of, it seemed like, interference run from the leadership there at the home to prevent that those complaints from being seen or heard. And that's what kind of came out in the committee hearings and in testimony from former members or from current serving members and from people at the home and people who are volunteers at the home. It's just a real. I don't doubt the best of intentions that were going on in this, but it didn't work out well, and it wasn't. I don't know how to say. It just, those of us in the legislature thought it was getting fixed, and then you get this audit, and you feel like you got blindsided because like, look, we knew there were problems when we got here. We could have been working on this all along, but we kept on being told again and again, things are getting taken care of. It's going to be okay. We've got this, and that in the era of term limits, there's only so much you can do, and so you kind of try to delegate to the team, and then when the team lets you down, you're like, man, I shouldn't have trusted. I should have done something differently. And now my time's almost up, and you're going to have a whole bunch of new people trying to figure it out. So.
Right. Well, it's a key issue for me in this race for the first congressional, because I look at that as being a microcosm, if you will, of somebody that you're relying on, like Jason Allen did at the time, was the head of the Michigan, veterans, and that home I felt was under his preview, and for him to tell you that, don't worry about it, we're working on it, things will be fine, and then ultimately when you have your hearings, you find out it hasn't been taken care of. I'm sorry, but that's dereliction of duty, in my opinion, and he let our veterans down. He didn't fix the problem, and now he wants to, be promoted to be our congressman in Washington, to go and maybe be on, veterans VA oversight like the current congressman, Dan Benishek. And I'm sorry, but when you drop the ball at the state level, I don't trust the guy to handle things in Washington.
Well, I mean, you invited me to be on the show. I'm trying to help fix this problem for our veterans, and I think our committee has done some really good work moving forward. I think that the new leadership that's there with Mr. Redford and Leslie Shanlahan are exceptional and are really turning things around. Well, certainly, I mean, I heard the forum the other day, and I think there were some good changes that were made in previously. A lot of updates. The home had a lot of problems with heating and cooling, and there were a lot of other things going on that did get fixed. I mean, one of the things that came up in the audit and in testimony is just ridiculous. The kitchen lost its certification. I mean, how does that happen that the kitchen loses certification, so then when family comes to visit their loved one there, they weren't allowed to eat with their loved one, but we could still feed the veterans there, but we couldn't feed guests who were there. I mean, it's just, why did that happen? That never should have happened. And I don't care whether it's a state employee or a private contractor, it was outrageous what we found out was going on, and that's why we've been so diligent in insisting on having these hearings.
Right. Well, listen, we appreciate you taking, over a half hour here with us this morning, answering all the questions, and we'd like to have you on more as we go through the legislative year, especially maybe prior to the lame duck, and we appreciate you being on with us this morning.
That's right, and you can support my joint resolution, JJ, and get rid of lame duck,
Yes, I am for that, too.
All right, Ed, thanks for being on with us.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
State Representative Ed McBroom spending a good chunk of the first hour with us. We appreciate that. And I'm sure we will have the next segment to digest your question and answer with him. We'll have that when we return in Your Defending Fathers. Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, Your Defending Fathers. Final segment of hour number one. If you missed the first part of this hour, we had State Representative Ed McBroom on with us, and we're going to replay that in midnight for the best of hour tonight. And you can always check it out on the podcast. So just go to Your Defending Fathers page, and you can find that in our podcast section.
Well, one thing that I'd like to give an opinion on, Brian, is that interview with State Representative Ed McBroom. He was on that committee for oversight of the VA home down there in Grand Rapids. His committee investigated issues starting, I believe he said, in February. These problems were not fixed under Jason Allen's leadership there for the Michigan veterans. And I'm sorry, I don't accept that when, quote unquote, the problems happened, that he was no longer the director down there.
But that was just a figurehead position. He was just appointed like a government appointment, and you volunteer for the job.
Well, the point is that you heard a couple of times Ed McBroom said that Jason Allen came to his office and said, I know you're hearing certain things. Don't worry about it. We're on top of it. We're fixing it. Everything will be fine. Not once, not twice, okay, but a couple of times. And then magically, he leaves, before the crap hits the fan. And I'm sorry. You don't tell a state representative that's in charge of oversight of that VA home in Grand Rapids that we know there's problems, we're on top of it, we're going to fix it, everything will be all right. Not once, twice, three times, okay, and then magically get reappointed and directed to some other department or responsibility within the Michigan Veterans Department. Okay, I'm sorry to be on a certain vein. He was appointed by the governor. It was a paid position.
Oh, so it's not just a volunteer position. He was actually getting paid for this job.
And getting paid quite well.
This wasn't just an appointed position where you serve on a board. You're actually a well-paid director for this position.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And I mean, I forget the number. I want to say like $130,000 a year, if not more.
Okay.
I could be wrong, but I mean, a state representative only makes $70,000.
Mm-hmm.
state senator makes 70. I mean, we're talking almost double the pay and a very specific, defined responsibility, mission statement, issues. You know, a VA home and veterans die, and people can't even come and visit with their veteran family member and be able to sit down in the cafeteria or in the lunchroom or whatever and eat the food that their own veteran family member is eating because they lost their certification in the kitchen. And now Jason Allen wants a promotion to be our congressman in Washington that might end up sitting on the same committee that Dan Benishek's been wasting our time on for the last 6 years. He wants a promotion to go to Washington to be on the VA Oversight Committee like Benishek. I'm sorry, sir, you couldn't even do it at the state level. What gives you any inclination that you feel you have the right to do it for us in Washington, D.C. at a national level?
Not only couldn't do it on a state level, if you're the director of that and that is your full-time job?
Yeah. And getting paid very well to do it, I'm sorry, if he delegated responsibilities down there and chose to trust certain people to get the job done, okay, and they didn't, the buck stops with him. If you can't get it done, Brian, with your people that you delegate to, then you step up and you take the ball and you fix it. Heads should have rolled, things should have changed, oversight should have been done. There's no reason why what happened down there in that VA home in Grand Rapids should have happened under his watch. Jason Allen, as far as I'm concerned, needs to take full responsibility for it, and he needs to take responsibility for it soon. Because this garbage that his campaign's putting out, that he's no longer the director of it when the crap hit the fan down there, I'm not buying it. Like Ed said himself, Brian, this has been going on for decades. And when they got in 2010, 6 years ago, they knew there was problems. They inherited those problems. They took it on as a task assignment. Snyder said he was going to get in there and fix it. And the first thing he does is appoint Jason Allen to be the director of Michigan Veterans Affairs, and then he goes and does not fix it in Grand Rapids. I'm sorry. Phone lines are open. Jason Allen, if you disagree with what I'm saying, call into the show. And I'm not going to take one of your surrogates calling in. I want you to call in. Brian, if one of his surrogates calls in, tell them, no, thank you, we're not interested. We only want to talk and debate this issue with Jason himself. I'm not going to tolerate a surrogate for his campaign to call in and give us more BS. I've heard it on the campaign trail. I've heard it through numerous sources. I've seen it on social media. This is an issue that the 1st Congressional District needs to bring up with Mr. Allen, and he needs to be accountable for it. And for him to try to spin this, in my opinion, Brian, you're a veteran. How does this make you feel when he says was no longer the director and had direct oversight when it happened?
I think I went on some of those rants back when Alan Arcan was running against Dan Benishek.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is the part, and I don't know if I have enough time to get into it fully in this segment. But when we come back from the break, I'll let you know how I feel about it. And with a number of friends and clients that are veterans and hear the stories that they have to go through, I definitely have an opinion on this. That's all the time we have for hour number 1. The conversation on this topic, though, will definitely continue, along with we'll open up the phone lines as well to get your point of view on it. We'll give you those phone numbers when we come back. Stick around, a lot more show to come on this Wednesday from Your Defending Fathers. Start of hour number 2 begins right now. Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, Your Defending Fathers.
So, Brian, after hearing State Representative Ed McBroom talk about the Oversight Committee that he chairs, investigating the VA home down there in Grand Rapids, and as a veteran yourself, what is your feelings about that conversation and what's been happening, what did happen, I should say, under Governor Snyder's appointment to have Jason Allen be the head of Michigan Veteran Affairs and direct oversight of that home.
Well, let's go back to appointments like you just talked about. Jason Allen, term limited out, held a very high position in the Republican Party as a state senator under then Governor Granholm. Part of the big problem in our state government, especially with term limits, is that you almost have the good old boy network saying, well, we need to take care of our own boys. Mm-hmm. You know, your term limited out here. Now let's create this position for you, and now here's your new job, making twice
and
as
this
much.
After the primary election result back in 2010, where he lost initially the first night by 1 vote. They did a recount. He ended up losing by 15. He did not call for a full recount of the ballots, but was offered a position appointment by Governor Snyder to say, listen, Jason, let Dan Benishek have it, for 6 years, and when he's done, you'll be in the limelight because I'm going to appoint you to be, the Director of Veterans Affairs here in Michigan. We'll keep you in the limelight. We'll keep you in the district, and in 2016, you can run, and it'll be your seat.
And let's make no mistake on this either. Jason Allen has been running for this first congressional seat for 6 years.
Yes.
It would not be uncommon for me to be chatting with a friend of mine or multiple friends throughout the district that's like, out of the clear blue sky, I got a call from Jason Allen today.
Right.
It's like, really, as a head of the Veterans Affairs, or are you a veteran, or is he conducting interviews, or what's he doing? He has been running nonstop for this job since he lost by 1 vote or 16 votes in August 6 years ago. And so when you take a look at that's problem number one. And we can even go back. Remember, there was a position that was going to be created in a bureaucracy for Wayne Schmidt when it looked like he was going to lose against Greg McMaster, until Wayne Schmidt pretty much went all out trying to destroy a person in his family so that he could get elected, because he's really not qualified to do anything else.
Well, staying focused on this.
So I'm just saying that's one issue first, that there's a big problem in our state government in bureaucracy, where you want to know why this bureaucracy keeps growing. It's the good old boy club like this. What experience does Jason Allen have as to lead this? Either administrative experience or veteran experience.
Right.
This is the thing that literally chaps my hide. Jason Allen is running against three-star General Jack Bergman.
Mm-hmm.
Now all of a sudden he's got to pop up on every little email press release that he gets. Oh, that I'm a veteran. It kind of reminds me when you have a Major League Baseball player that shows up somewhere, and in order so you can sound like you're part of the club. Oh yeah, I was an all-star when I was a little leaguer. Yeah, I know the game. Let's talk ball.
Right.
No.
Well, I got a Facebook chat message from one of our listeners. I agree with you guys. Jason had no clue what he was doing. This was a political appointment to keep him in the limelight for his run in the 1st Congressional District. He has not changed in the last 20 years. I served in Grand Traverse County as a county commissioner back in the day. Same Jason, same Jason, same Jason. So, and like you said, what qualifications did he have to be an administrator of a VA home?
The justified, the salary that I heard was $160,000.
Yeah, and like I said, I thought it was $130,000, but regardless, it's double what a state senator makes, appointed by the governor.
So this was a position that's not just, okay, we're going to get you into bureaucracy somewhere. This is a well-paid position that if you let's throw this out to the best man to get this position, I would say it would go to somebody like a Jack Bergman. somebody that is well qualified within the system that could run something like that. Instead, it goes to a political appointee.
Banks and credit unions are only paying 0.25%.
Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, your defending fathers. We do have a phone call to take before I continue on with where I was going with last segment, in a short segment like that. You're on with your defending fathers.
Good morning. Hey, this is Dave Agent calling in. I heard your little interview with Ed McBroom, and I heard Randy's discussion concerning Senator Jason Allen. I'd just like to make a couple comments if I could.
Absolutely, Dave. Go ahead.
Well, I served during the same period that Jason served. When you're in the legislature, you get a feeling real quickly who are part of the real establishment, who are taking the orders as they are told to do things, to squelch bills or pass bills. And then when they do capitulate and go along with the orders given, they're always rewarded. There's no question that I think he was rewarded that position, which paid much more than he was making as a senator, to keep his name in there and for doing what he was told to do. Personally, he's a nice guy to talk to. I've even hunted with him and so forth. But as far as somebody that I would want there in Washington to make the correct decisions for the people, no. I considered him a bottleneck at times to some good legislation. I know he had some particular bill of mine he squelched. I can't remember which one it was. It usually had to do with illegal migration or driver's license for illegals or ALEC or E-Verify or something. But I just got the gut feeling that the best man for that job is going to be the general. I've endorsed the general. Either Casperson, who voted obviously for Medicaid expansion, he was a fifth vote. It speaks volumes about these individuals when they can be bought off. So I want somebody in Congress, especially for your district up there, that cannot be bought. And quite frankly, sometimes that makes you unpopular where you're at, makes you unpopular in Lansing if you can't be bought. It will make you unpopular in Congress as well. But those are the kind of people that need to be there. Our founding fathers were the kind of people that fought and gave their lives and gave their land and gave their families, if you will, to give us the freedoms we have. And I think we lose them when we have people that are just there for their own self and grandchildren and so forth.
Well, Dave, one of my points on this is because we are in the thick of the race up here in the 1st Congressional District, and, you know, Jason, like Brian says now, in every single email, every single social posting on Facebook, every press release that goes out, they mention the fact that he's a veteran. You know, and that he was appointed Michigan Veterans Affairs by Governor Rick Snyder. And my point is that I'm sorry, but during the time that he was in charge of that oversight of that VA in Michigan, it was his responsibility to fix the problems in that home in Grand Rapids. And they now they point to the fact that, well, after he left is when the real crust of the problems came out or happened, and then Ed McBroom did his investigation hearings. My point is, we heard it from Ed McBroom himself. I have the podcast of it. Jason Allen went to Ed McBroom's office and told him twice specifically, if not more, that he was fully aware of the situation going on down there in the Grand Rapids home, and that he was aware of it, and they were taking care of it, and quote-unquote, everything will be fine. Everything will be fixed. It didn't get fixed, and people died. I almost attribute to this, I don't know how many veterans did die or whatever on that watch down there, but it's almost like what Hillary Clinton did to the 4 Americans in Benghazi.
Well, yeah, and the other thing I would ask, too, is you can say you're a veteran. What does that mean? I mean, there's such a thing we always said in the military, garbage in, garbage out. Depends who you get in. Comes into the military. What was his job? I believe he was nothing more than an NCO, low-ranking NCO. So that's a non-commissioned officer. So he was a sergeant or something, or an airman. I don't know what branch he was in. But that doesn't make him an expert in a home by far. It just means he can use it for, to try to get that position. But I believe there's no question he was given that job as a reward for what he did and didn't do by those that were in power. And also, I think you need to look at what happened with the Blue Cross Blue Shield deal and why his wife got that position with Blue Cross Blue Shield when that got passed. That, to me, is Obamacare, and I just think that's just wrong. So there's a whole lot of things going on there that people need to know about. It's not just him. His wife was very much involved in politics and had a lot of control over there. And she was
she was the Secretary of the House, then helped push HB 4714 through, which, like you said, expanded Medicaid here in Michigan and basically implemented Obamacare.
Absolutely. That should have never happened, and it's going to cost us billions of dollars in the state of Michigan. She was rewarded for that by Blue Cross Blue Shield, just as well as Arlen Meekoff was for pushing that. Like you said, he got $530,000 from the hospital to make sure that got passed. So what you're dealing with are people that can be bought, and that's what people need to know out there. If they can be bought in the small things, they can be bought in the big things, and it's even worse in Washington. So my vote would be with the general, just because he's been there, has much more experience in command positions, not just being manipulated or being just a mouthpiece for what he's told to do. So that would be my statement. So I support the general. I talked to the general. I was with the general at one speaking engagement, and I think he's the guy that you want there between those two individuals. And again, Casperson was the one that was involved as well with that Blue Cross Blue Shield and Medicaid expansion. And that's just wrong, folks. Just plain wrong when they flip a vote for getting something for doing it. So you got to keep those things in mind. They're going to do the same thing when they get in a higher position.
Hey, Dave, you raised a great point that let me pull all the pieces together for you, because you make a point right now. Yesterday, a press release from Jason Allen's campaign. Jason Allen commits to repeal and replace Obamacare on anniversary of Supreme Court decision to uphold. You just blew that out of the water. Is that how is that going to go with his wife's plum position down in Traverse City, working for Blue Cross Blue Shield? Was that part of the deal? And I mean, we have Obamacare in place. We talk about Tom Casperson's vote that did it in the Senate, in the game that was played there, but not a lot of people are bringing up the fact of what Susan Allen, Jason Allen's wife, is in responsibility to this. And now he comes out with this press release, here's what I'm going to do. You just connected some pieces together for some people that are absolutely spot on.
Well, that's the thing, though. Most people don't know, and they're too busy making a living, paying their taxes, to understand what's going on. So when you connected the dots like he just did, and you find out that not only he and his wife were involved with getting that passed, you see that he's not what he purports to be. So you can be guaranteed, if he goes to Washington, just like for example, our senators and representatives said, if we get the majority in the House and the Senate and Congress, we're going to impeach Obama. Well, guess what? They didn't. And that bothered me greatly. Matter of fact, when I put that resolution in that they should do what they promised, I couldn't even get a vote out of the RNC because they were afraid to do it. So quite often they say what they want to say when they want to get elected, but when they get there, they do something differently. There's the test, folks. It's not so much what they say, it's what they do. And most people don't know how people have voted on issues. So I challenge you to look at, I don't even know, maybe you know, Randy, what was his conservative voting record in the Senate and or the House? Do you know offhand?
Well, I know he was slightly higher than Casperson, but he was still down in the 65% conservative ranking. I don't think he ever made it up to 70.
Well, maybe at Northwestern Michigan
has been at 49.
Maybe at Northwest Michigan College or at Miami University, where both places where he went, that's probably a passing grade.
Well, the point is this, too, and what Dave's talking about, both of these individuals, Casperson and Allen, had a role to play in Medicaid expansion, HB 4714, even though Jason wasn't in the Senate and voted for it, Casperson slipped on it. But again, Suzanne Allen, his wife, was the Secretary of the House, and she's the one that rammed it through to get all those legislators, Republicans, a few weak-kneed Republicans joining the Democrats to get it done in the House. So both of these candidates running against the general were involved in Medicaid expansion and the implementation of Obamacare.
But that's just indicative of past votes as well. You got to remember, you got to look at their overall voting record. Now, if you got a 69 or 65% voting record and you're a Republican and you're coming from the Northern Peninsula up there, or that northern area, that's pretty bad. I mean, what did I get? You know, remember what my voting record was in conservative race?
Your last year, you were at 96.
No, I was 100%. I was the last year with 100%. The year before.
Oh, that's right. The year before, you flipped with McMillan. Right. I stand corrected. Right.
So what you're looking at is if you're coming from those kind of districts and you want somebody that's going to vote conservative, I think the highest conservative rating for a Democrat is what? Pretty close to that, maybe 60?
Right.
So that's pretty close to a Democrat voting record, some of the higher rates.
If Scott DeAnda was put on those report cards matching back in the day when Jason Allen was there, I believe Scott DeAnda's rating would probably be higher than Jason Allen's.
I would agree. I know Scott. I've talked to him, with you at some of your meetings and so forth, and I don't understand why he's a Democrat, but he
runs as a Democrat to get elected, I believe.
That's probably correct, and I heard that from Dylan, too, the chairman for the Democrat Party in the state of Michigan. He was in my office and said, well, my parents were Republicans, but I had to run as a Democrat because I couldn't get elected as a Republican. Now he's a Democrat. It's just a joke, folks. These people are out for themselves. You got to understand that. Many are. I'd say about 80%, 75 to 80% are out for themselves, and the other 20, 25% are trying to do just what's right. You got to kind of pick and choose, and you got to be wise about how you vote. If he's got voting records like that, don't vote for him. You're going to get the same thing or worse when they get to Washington because the pressure is greater. And peer pressure is something that I think in my background as a fighter pilot and an airline pilot, I didn't capitulate to because we had to make decisions on our own based on what we knew was right, and they better be the right decisions or somebody's going to get hurt or somebody's going to die. On the other hand, when you have people like Jason that says, well, he was in the military, yeah, well, what did he do? He was just simply giving orders, and he does those things. So he wasn't really making command decisions. He was just in the military. Well, you can be an airman, just sweeping the floor and be in the military. I don't know what he did, but I suspect he worked for somebody there. But that doesn't mean much to me. The general means a little bit more to me. If you're a 3-star general, you've obviously commanded and know how to make decisions.
Yep, amen. Well, we appreciate you calling in and giving us your opinion. And Brian, I just got a text message. State Representative Scott DeAnda said he heard his name mentioned. He'll be calling in after the break.
Okay.
So we'll get a follow-up with him as well, Dave. And bottom line is, I think that this issue, Dave, is a legitimate issue to be discussed as part of this first congressional race. Would you agree?
I would agree, and I just want to add one thing. I've been in the legislature with both of these individuals. I have seen them flip on issues they should not flip. They can be bought. You do not want them in a leadership position in Congress.
Okay, here's a real quick answer for you guys. Jason Allen served in the Michigan Army National Guard from 1990 to 1996.
Okay, so the National Guard.
Army National Guard.
Weekend warrior.
Yes, that's exactly right. That's his qualifications for being ahead of the... Oh, let me go get some aspirin where you're defending fathers.
Thanks, Dave.
Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, your defending fathers. Randy, you have absolutely given me one of the biggest headaches I have had in a long time today.
So sorry, sir.
I am, my head is absolutely in full headache mode today. And I should have done some stretches and stuff during the break. But we've got a phone call to take to start off this segment. You're on with your defending fathers.
Well, good morning, gentlemen. Scott DeAnda from the west end of Michigan's Upper Peninsula.
Hey, good morning, Scott.
Good morning. Yeah, just, kind of wanted to piggyback off what Dave mentioned this morning. It is a tough road to hoe when you're elected, but you got to make the decisions and you got to stand up, and it's a tough thing to do when it's an easy thing to do if you got a good moxie in your heart about a lot of these issues. You can't get the pressure from your leadership, from special interests. You got to stand up and you got to do what's right. And I think that, a lot of us that vote for our people in our districts, we get ridiculed from our parties. You get ridiculed from your colleagues, even because I know myself. I mean, you talk about these ratings and that. I have about an 80% rating on conservative voting record. So I get picked on probably a lot from even my good Republican friends in that, too, because it's probably an embarrassment for them. But when it comes down to the Grand Rapids Veterans Home, this is something that I'm just so sick and tired of having this discussion about. Let's have a committee meeting and let's try to do this and that. This stuff is over. These discussions need to be stopped. We need to have the executive of this state, the governor, step up and send his chief of staff down to Grand Rapids Veterans Home. Fire that administration. Go up to Jacob Eddy Center in Marquette where there's no problems, everything is running right. Have that administration go down to Grand Rapids and implement exactly what they're doing in Marquette, Michigan. Because that is what needs to happen. We don't need to have any more of these Senate and State House oversight committees and all this chatter and talk and blah, blah, blah. That's what needs to happen.
But Scott, let me tell you, because I'm not sure how old you are, but I'm going to give you an old man's perspective of how things used to be prior to 1963 when we went from a part-time legislature to a full-time legislature. What you just described was exactly the way the state of Michigan operated from 1837 to 1963. The governor was in charge of these bureaucratic departments. And what happened was Governor Romney was too dang lazy to do it. And he forced a constitutional amendment changing us from a part-time legislature to a full-time legislature and shifted all of these bureaucratic departments to oversight to the state legislators who get elected. What you're talking about doing is Governor Snyder, being a leader and going back to the time of when we had a governor like Soapy Williams. Soapy, nicknamed because he used to clean things up. He would go down there and do exactly what you said. Take the entire administrative staff, clone them, have the clones continue to operate the mode of operandi in Marquette's home, and move those folks down there, pay for them to stay in hotels or put them in a house or whatever, and have them implement the exact same programs they're doing in Marquette that is working. But you can't do it because a part-time legislature is no longer in place. We don't have a governor that's a real leader and somebody responsible for these bureaucratic departments. It's all been shifted to you guys who are term limited. And Ed McBroom said it himself. As a term limited representative of a chair of oversight for the VA, he's gone come January 1st.
Well, I think that is correct, Randy. I think that us going back to that situation would be a lot better for the people of Michigan. It has to be implemented. But one thing that I know that could be done with that oversight committee is they could make a motion. And this is the problem that I have with so many of our committees. We sit there and we have this discussion and it goes on for days. Nobody makes a motion. And on that oversight committee, they could make a motion to send a letter to the governor with that type of plan that I just laid out, but nobody wants to do it. And this constant chatter about, well, it's election season and we all are standing there taking our pictures with the veterans with the flags in the background. That needs to end. We need to stand up, give the direction to the governor in a letter that comes out of the committee to say, this is what we want done. But that has not happened. And I find it so tasteless that we just continue to use this issue politically in the media and in our literature and in these elections. Because if we were serious about cleaning this up, this could be implemented today. with the executive office to say, these people that are down there who are incompetent, they are fired today. And let them go through the process. They're all at-will employees. Let them go through the process of coming to try to get the job back. And I'm saying that as a former union president, that if people don't do their position right, they got to be gone.
Well,
Period.
one other
End of
aspect
story.
that Ed McBroom exposed was that this had been going on for decades under Jennifer Granholm. This was an inherited problem that Snyder got. And when they got elected in 2010 and went down there as a majority, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office, they said there is a problem at this VA home in Grand Rapids. We're going to fix it. And they were told they were going to fix it, that this was a priority. And Jason Allen was appointed by the governor of the state of Michigan to be the head of Michigan Veteran Affairs, a newly created bureaucratic department, in my opinion, created just for him. And he took on the responsibility of going down there and fixing the problems in that Grand Rapids home, and he failed to do it. And very conveniently got moved out of that position just before announcing and running this year that he's going to run for Congress in Washington. I'm sorry, but I'm sick and tired of this not being exposed in this campaign, and I think the people of the 1st District deserve to know about it.
Well, I'm definitely with you, because if we're not going to take care of these people that fought to keep our freedom, to keep our way of life, I mean, what sense does we have to keep continuing on with this? It's the fact that, we are on this summer recess, that if this was our issue that we wanted to take care of, let's go back to session. Let's come back to Lansing. Have the governor call us back, implement the House and Senate to come back in, have the Oversight Committee meeting, have a motion made of how we're going to get it done, and move forward. That could be done, or they could do it as the executive. They got the privilege to be able to do this. They should be able to have the response to any type of emergency. This is a crisis, and it's an emergency. Deal with it. Why are we continually going down the path of constantly having the same discussion about the same things that we know are wrong? And the other part that I just cannot even believe, the fact that, we don't have a license there to be able to have our family and friends going in to visit these veterans, and they can't eat in there. And that part is through Laura, and we can't make that happen with a food license. This is ridiculous.
Yep.
This is just absolutely ridiculous. We have the executive office that could make these things happen so very quickly, but it's not being done. And that's a failure on me and every other elected person in the state of Michigan. It's a failure on us. We're not doing this and getting it done for the people. Period.
Well,
End of story.
I think it's something that we definitely need to reach out to Governor Snyder's office and put forward your proposal, your plan, because if they can do it in Marquette, Michigan, in the UP, why can't they do it in Grand Rapids, Michigan?
Well, and I tell you what, if they are that incompetent of what they have out there, that they need help, I think they should also contact someone who understands this process. Contact Dave Agema. Ask Dave to come in and spend a month. Get him in there as on a special project, because I think that he could probably take care of it pretty quickly with his military background, his idea with the legislative process, and being able to
Business
get something
administration
done.
degree. I believe he has a master's in finance of it.
Sure.
I mean, the guy has the degrees even.
Well, I think, Scott, you hit the nail on the head. When you're right off the bat, you said, you know what, there's a problem there. If there's a problem and you know it, you would go in and you would solve the problem. You would sit down and say, okay, here's what's going on, and you would figure out exactly where the problem is, and you would fire people that need to be fired that weren't doing their job and put people in there that could do the job. And yet you had an administrator that was paid 6 figures plus and did not have the competence to do that, and people were dying.
Yeah.
I'm outraged. I am literally outraged.
And I think that This is the most basic thing that we have in this state, to take care of these people. They are the best group of people. They're the only reason that we have what we have. And they're down there and they're suffering. And if this is something that is so politically a hot potato, that's why I throw that idea out there, that have the executive office contact our former representative, Dave Agema, have him come and do the dirty work that they don't want to do. Get somebody in there that's going to go down there, take charge, work with the Marquette Veterans Home, and solve this problem. Get somebody in there that knows how to solve a problem and move forward, because this is absolutely ridiculous that we keep putting these people through this pain and suffering, and we're putting the families and their friends that go down there to witness this. This is just unbelievable. This is one of the worst examples of management and bad management in the state of Michigan that you can ever have. This is not an issue with a pothole or a bridge that's fallen apart. This is people. This is lives, and it matters.
Absolutely.
So,
okay, sir.
Thank you for letting me put my 2 cents in it, but that's how I see it. We got a different perspective on it when we're up in an area where we're shoveling 250 inches of snow every winter. Take care,
we
guys.
Appreciate you calling in. Thanks a lot, Scott.
Bye.
Representative Scott Dianda from the 110th. Boy, a lot to digest. This has been a very, very nutrient-dense show today. And maybe when we come back, we'll get a chance to review it and digest it a little bit more slowly. Stick around. Final segment of Hour 2 when we return. Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, your defending fathers, and
couple of Facebook comments during the break, Brian.
Yeah.
Dave Agema would be awesome. He lives now near Grand Rapids VA home. He would be awesome going in there and firing everybody and implementing what they're doing right up in the UP. Got another one, said that the auditing of this home showed many problems going all the way back to Granholm. They should have fixed it by now. Enough is enough.
Well, this goes back to, I'll go back and look at this in my problem with this at the federal level. At the federal level, the Veterans Affairs Administration, under George Bush said, you know what, we found some problems in the VA. We have been trying to fix this. Under Mr. Obama, now you're the president, we're letting you know these are problems we've been trying to address and fix. Continue to try and fix them. And I don't know if it was bureaucracy or bureaucrats or what the problems were there. So the Obama administration has been lax in doing that.
Yeah, but I'm going to interject one point right there.
Go ahead.
Our first congressional district, current U.S. Congressman, Dr.
Well, you didn't
Dan
let me.
Benishek.
You didn't let me. I was trying to get the historical perspective into bringing it all the way up to current.
Right.
When Dan Benishek was elected as a congressman, he said, you know what, I love veterans. I've served in VA hospitals. I want to serve on that committee with the VA.
VA Oversight Committee.
And in his first term, again, the term before him, it was fully under Obama control in the House, the Senate, and the presidency. But when he was appointed there in 2010, the Republicans had control of those committees. It was under Republican leadership.
Correct.
And matter of fact, I don't know how many press releases I've received just in the last 3 months about VA-related stuff. Mm-hmm. And it's like, okay, you're on the committee, fix it.
Right.
You have the power to call people in, to bring in directors, to grill them up and down, and to fire and replace if you want to. And yet it's not been done at the federal level. And so I look at the same thing now that I have just been literally had my underwear pulled in a bind on this at the federal level for 4 years now, following these stories. And it even more so when we were looking at it when Alan Arcand was running, who was a veteran running in the 1st Congressional District. And now we start looking at some of this with your interview with Ed McBroom earlier today, saying, oh, this stuff was going on. You chaired this committee. This was your investigation. Well, when we come back from the break, we're going to turn this into a quadruple spin because Dave Agema called in and weighed on it. Also, Representative Scott Dianda called in and weighed in on it. We're going to actually bring in the report that was released in February 18th of 2016, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Fox 17 News from Western Michigan, Fox, did a 4-minute news clip of it. We're not going to play the 4-minute news clip. Well, if you want to, Randy.
Yes.
Yeah, I sent it to you.
It.
I don't have the ability with the new system yet. This is one of the fixes that has to be done to run this through the board.
Okay.
If you want to run it, we'll run this through the board, and we'll do it that way because I think people need to know what was going on under Jason Allen's leadership when he was being paid the big bucks as an administrator to run this as a VA.
Absolutely. Yep. Because people need to know the truth. This story needs to be exposed because it is now part of the 1st Congressional District race. We've got a person who's running that was in charge and oversight of this home in Grand Rapids that did not fix the problems. And now Jason Allen wants us to support him and make him the primary candidate in the Republican race to be going then to Congress and to Washington.
Exactly. And attached to that also, Randy, and I want you to put this for our second hour discussion. I've not had a chance to read this yet, but there is a 44-page report that's in a PDF file that you can download on this as well.
Well, I'll queue up the video portion of it, Brian, during the break, and we'll be able to get it going next hour. We're going to post it on our website and on our Facebook page if you haven't liked it yet, facebook.com/Your Defending Fathers. It also posts on patriotvoice.net as our website. Click on our link, Your Defending Fathers, and the article will be there as well. You'll be able to watch the whole thing and read the entire story. But I'm sorry, but this is part of the campaign. We are going to talk about this. The phone lines are open. If Jason Allen wants to call in and have a debate with us on it, be more than happy to have him call in and let's discuss it.
I've got a phone call right now. I'll give you just a second. Do you have a quick point to make?
Yeah, I would just like to talk with Randy during the break, if it's all right.
Randy, go ahead and give him your number real quick.
Yeah, I'll give him my cell phone, 231-360-5140. Call me at right here at the news break. I'll answer your call.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, that's all the time we have for this hour. If the first 2 hours were any indication, oh my goodness, strap it in for hour number 3. It's going to be going into hyperdrive with Your Defending Fathers. Start of hour number 3 begins right now. Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, Your Defending Fathers. First 2 hours today, we started out the show with Ed McBroom calling in and breaking news. In the lame duck session, he's going to try to get my time change bill through so that we stay on Central Time for the rest of our lives. Well, okay.
Never have to move the clocks ever again in Michigan.
Maybe he didn't quite go that far, but I'm going to try to get it. That's my goal.
That's Brian's goal. And State Representative Ed McBroom is from the 108th District up in the UP and was the chairman of the Oversight Committee with regards to the veteran home down in Grand Rapids, Michigan. Mm-hmm. And we questioned him about Jason Allen's involvement as the head director of Michigan Veteran Affairs back during the time when these problems continued. Have gotten a few phone calls, a couple Facebook comments already, Brian. I posted the article where Governor Snyder in February replaced the chief, the main person that was running that VA home down in Grand Rapids. And the interesting part to this, and I did not know this, I just found it out in this story, was that Governor Rick Snyder replaced the director of Michigan's Veterans Affairs Agency after an audit uncovered problems at the state-run nursing home for veterans. Jeff Barnes, who led the agency for 3 years, resigned Friday at Snyder's request. Now, this is dated back in February the 19th, your birthday, 2016.
Mm-hmm.
He was replaced because Snyder asked for his resignation. The audit released Thursday, which we're going to talk about now, said workers at the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans falsely claimed they were checking on patients, failed to properly investigate allegations of abuse and neglect, took too long to fill prescriptions, and he had problems serving safe food. Snyder said the audit findings are, quote, deeply troubling. James Redford, Snyder's chief legal counsel and a former judge, will lead the agency for now. He has served in the Navy as part of the Judge Advocate General's Corps, so he's a JAG. Barnes, a former Army officer, previously was the governor's deputy chief of staff and his former campaign manager. So Snyder gives, to his friends who ran his campaign, this job down in Grand Rapids. He was no more qualified than Jason Allen was to be the director of Veteran Affairs.
Mm-hmm.
But
and this was the point that I was making going into one of the breaks. I had a question from somebody, and said, are you demeaning those that are serving in the Guard? And the answer is no. But the way that I see Jason Allen doing this in every single press release that comes out, I'm a veteran, trying to equate it to running against Jack Bergman, who is a 3-star general.
Right.
I mean, this is somebody that probably went to West Point with him being a general, has experience where he was there every single day, not just one weekend a month and showing up at Camp Grayling for a weekend or for 2 weeks. That's a huge difference than somebody that, like me, that was sweating out in the middle of the Mojave Desert every single day for 2 years. That's a huge difference.
I'll go even further. Dave Agema called in as an officer, who was a fighter pilot who dropped bombs, He's the one that said weekend warrior.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't Brian that said it. It was Dave Agema that said it. So let's just get some clarification on that point. Dave is qualified to call him whatever he wants to call him, and he called him a weekend warrior. Not our words, Dave Agema's words. And I'm not pushing the blame on the Dave. I'm just saying he's a lot more qualified to know the stature of people who serve in our military. One person I think who knows that is Dave Agema.
And I think the one thing, too, with the appointment now, somebody that actually served in the Corps full-time and worked in the JAG, the legal part of the military, much different than somebody that is a, quote-unquote weekend warrior on that point. I think this was a much stronger appointment. Stick around, more to come. Your Defending Fathers. Brian Summerfield, Chuck Randy, your Defending Fathers. And, I'm sure you probably have been asking yourself this question. Well, where is the media on all this? How come the media is not reporting on this and getting this information out there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I hate to inform you of this, but we are the media.
Right.
Gasp all across the state of Michigan.
Got a text message from Dave Agema in response to what I said about him being in the military.
Mm-hmm.
I was on active duty and a weekend warrior. In reserves, he served in all three.
And what happens is a lot of times after your active duty status, and sometimes even your first contract is set up this way, you have active duty, so many years of active duty, and then either so many years of National Guard or inactive National Guard. Or when you get out, you can sign a contract for National Guard. There's multiple ways to do it. It's not uncommon for somebody to be active for so many years and then be in the National Guard for so many years as well. Very common. So he'd be able to tell you, oh yeah, definitely. There's a difference between the two. I've got this comment too. Redford is a good man. I've had several contacts with him. He is very sharp. So, and again, this might be a situation where Governor Snyder saw that there was a problem and he appointed somebody that he knew that he could trust.
Right. And Dave also came back and said National Guard guys are good, but Jason was in a position not equivalent to a general.
Not even close.
No command decisions. NCOs simply take orders. They do not give them. He flew in the Guard and active duty. He said both are needed, but we know the difference between a 3-star Marine general and somebody who served in the National Guard.
And again, the way that I'm looking at this is somebody trying to make their resume look better by going, oh yeah, I've got military experience too.
Right.
But, again, look at the full resume on this. There's a huge difference.
Well, I have that video queued up, Brian. It's only actually 3 minutes long.
Okay, let's do it.
Let's play it and tell me when to stop.
Findings out tomorrow morning is what we anticipate, and it will be very, very disturbing.
Okay, stop.
10, our veterans aren't getting them.
And that was State Representative Holly Hughes. She was making comments to this news reporter that they were going to start investigating the home, conducting this audit that you referred to.
Mm-hmm.
And she, I fixed the volume on it, Brian, but that was Holly Hughes, State Representative, calling into the news show as a tee-up to this report.
And this is out of Fox 17 News out of Grand Rapids area, the TV station down in that area that did this report.
Right, and we have to give credit to them.
Yep.
Medical care they deserve. That's according to the State Office of the Auditor General, ready to release a damning report on the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans. That audit's already leading to some planned hearings by state Republicans on what they say is a troubling pattern of...
Now, there it is right there, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
They already knew there was problems. Ed McBroom said that when they got elected in 2010 and took over control of Lansing, they were told that there was problems in this home dating back to when Jennifer Granholm was the governor. This audit conducted in 2016 is still going to continue 6 years after Governor Snyder took office. Well, 5 years when they sworn in January of 11. They're still having problems? Wait a minute, you guys have been in charge of this thing for 5 years. Nothing has changed in 5 years? That's what I have a problem with, is that we're sitting here talking about this now 5 years later and we still have the problems. I'll get this queued up and replayed. There we go. Oh, for some reason it's refreshing. Hold on one second, Brian. What's your thoughts about that point, Brian?
To the State Office of the
I go back to Representative Scott Diane again. If you know that there's problems in an area, as an administrator, you go in and you take care of it right now. And you don't trust the people that are there saying, oh, yeah, we had problems, so we fixed it. You're going to just trust the people that had the problems in the first place? It goes right back to the whole Flint water thing in Governor Snyder.
Right.
The person that was in charge when those problems took place, and now we expect him to be the one to fix this and know that he's doing it right.
Right.
There's nowhere in the world that happens except in government.
Well, one of the things I think that they definitely didn't do any changes, and now they're going to claim that this is going to be fixed because this audit came out.
Mm-hmm.
But let's continue with the video.
They deserve. That's according to the State Office of the Auditor General, ready to release a damning report on the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans. That audit's already leading to some planned hearings by state Republicans on what they say is a troubling pattern of mismanagement and neglect. Fox 17 has obtained the summary report of those findings, detailing serious concerns when it it comes to member care services, the administration of pharmaceuticals, and the management of complaints regarding care.
Fox 17's Eric Francis has been digging into the summary findings in the newsroom now with details.
Yeah, Christian and Janice, location checks, staffing numbers, keeping and distributing medications, logging and addressing complaints from residents about their care. Those are just some of the items red flagged by the state in the summary report, which is already leading to a call for action. The Grand Rapids Home for Veterans, a place where 389 members receive nursing care as of August. Another 43 housing units on campus are cared for by 601 state and contracted workers. A state audit covering a time span of 2 years or more, yielding results one state lawmaker calls disturbing.
Our veterans deserve much better than this, and we will examine what needs to be done and try to keep the promise that we've given them.
Member Care Services, a focal point of the summary report issued Thursday, detailing surveillance video showing a large percentage of location checks and fall checks for veterans didn't happen when they should.
Listen,
even
stop
though
right there.
documentation was filed saying.
I'm sorry, Brian?
Go ahead and stop it right there.
Okay.
They actually had surveillance video.
Yes.
Only 40% of bed checks and 33% of fall alarm checks were done.
Yeah.
What in the world are you doing?
Didn't even occur.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Now, here's the thing. They got video surveillance cameras on these people. Okay? They have all the documentation they need to call that person in and say, why didn't you go do the checks? We have it on videotape. This should have been a supervisor the next morning reviewing those videos and saying, why didn't you do your job last night?
Mm-hmm.
Where were you guys? Down in the lunchroom, having lunch, playing euchre, watching sports? I mean, what the heck was going on? And the thing of it is there was no oversight. That's the thing that just drives me crazy, is where was the supervisors? I'll continue. Oh, this darn video keeps spooling, Brian. Hold on one second. Provided documentation that the checks occurred 100% and 96% of the time. What is going on with that? They have absolutely no idea what was going on at the time when it was happening.
It did. Staffing unable to meet the needs of veterans 81% of the time during a 4-month sample, down as many as 22 workers on a given day. An estimated $5.2 million worth of pharmaceuticals mismanaged, according to the summary, and a failure to bill insurance companies when appropriate on these drugs, creating losses near $1 million in a nearly 2-year time frame.
Stop.
Then there's complaints from the vets themselves. The report finding not.
Talk about waste, fraud, and abuse.
Yes.
Let any pharmacy in the state mismanage $5 million worth of pharmaceuticals and find out what happens and who lands in jail.
Right.
I mean, I've seen cases in the news with a couple $1,000s of doctor mismanaging like OxyContin.
Yep.
And they're out of business. $5 million over a 2-year period just in pharmaceuticals alone.
Well, now they're talking about complaints from the veterans themselves.
Mm-hmm.
One of them were forwarded to the manager of department those complaints were filed against, with 9 of 10 complaints alleging abuse or neglect, not getting to the director of nursing.
91 complaints, Brian, were filed by our veterans in writing. 9 out of 10 of those, 90% of those 91 complaints did not get forwarded to the director of nursing. They were buried.
All this just on the summary, which many say will lead to consequences.
All participants will be fully reviewed and actions will be taken to remedy these issues, everything is going to be on the table from reprimands to job terminations. And I predict that that will happen.
Now, the audit summary also flagging mismanagement of funds when it comes to members who've died and the timeliness of distributing those funds. This entire summary is on our website at fox17online.com. Live in the newsroom tonight, Erica Francis, Fox 17 News. Erica.
And that, Brian, entire report, they have a link here, which I will post on our Facebook page and our website as well. A complete 44-page report in PDF file.
And did you notice the last part of that, where, it talked about, not only was there mismanagement, but people died?
Yes. And Holly Hughes, the state representative that was speaking there, said that they're going to get to the bottom of the mistreatment of Michigan's veterans. It is the height of hypocrisy, said Brandon Dillon, chair of the Michigan Democrat Party, in a press statement. If she wants answers and accountability from the people responsible for the horrendous conditions at the Grand Rapids Homes for Veterans, she needs to simply look in the mirror. He claims that her vote back in 2011 for the budget cut $4.2 million from the Grand Rapids Home for Veterans and privatized the care of our servicemen and women is what caused the crisis of neglect to start. Now, I've got a counter to Brandon Dillon's statement. If the union workers were doing such a good job, why did they have to be replaced? If there was no problems and no complaints, Governor Snyder wouldn't have just arbitrarily gone in there and axed those workers. Evidently, there was a problem. And I don't want to say that there was a cut to the budget for the problem. They got plenty enough money down there. It's just that they're not managing it properly.
Well, look at all the millions that they just found in waste, fraud, and abuse. Here's the quote that needs to be put on the bottom of every press release, along with the requirements, or along with the resume booster of being a veteran. Quote, the audit reflects a lack of leadership, a lack of current policies, procedures, and training, and the lack of accountability. Unquote. Final half hour when we return. Your Defending Fathers. Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, your Defending Fathers. Final half hour of today's program. As sometimes programs get pretty detailed, and our goal here is to educate, inform, keep people accountable, and in this case today, based on something that we started with an interview from State Representative Ed McBroom. And we started investigating further and going deeper into it. This is a major part of Jason Allen's resume.
Well, it is, Brian, and I want to make sure that people understand this is not any type of personal vendetta situation here. These are the facts, and we need to ask the questions. This person is asking for our support and our vote on August 2nd to be the Republican nominee for U.S. Congress to go to Washington to represent us. And I see a reoccurring theme here that is a microcosm of what has already happened at the federal level. I got one of our listeners texted me a message during the break. Okay, no different than exactly what happened at the Washington federal level over the VA Oversight Committee, of which Dan Benishek had been a member on since he got to Washington back in January of 2011. Mm-hmm. John McCain, another member of that Oversight Committee. He's getting hammered in his primary that's taking place August 30th by Dr. Kelly Ward, a state senator from Arizona, that said under his watch and Dan Benishek's watch, people died at the Phoenix VA hospital in Phoenix, Arizona. Now, this is the exact same thing, in my opinion. This is a microcosm of what happened at the national level and took place in Grand Rapids, Michigan. And you've got a state senator, former state senator, as the head of Michigan Veteran Affairs, allowed this to happen on his watch there in Grand Rapids. Now he wants a promotion to replace Dan Benishek on that Oversight Committee? I'm sorry, but your performance, your record does not prove, sir, that you have the capability to perform the duties assigned to you. So stop talking about your experience. Stop talking about the fact that you were a veteran and the fact that you served on the Michigan Veteran Affairs Department under Governor Snyder. You got an F, buddy. Sorry, flat out, you failed. You failed the veterans. You failed the taxpayers of Michigan. Brian, you pointed to the waste, fraud, and abuse on the prescriptions alone.
Right in that report.
So we're posting the video there. This is Fox News, Channel 17, West Michigan, out of Grand Rapids, Michigan, where the home is located. This isn't me and Brian reporting on this. This is what they put out there. And a friend of yours, Jason, State Representative Holly Hughes, was on the phone with the people making comments. We had State Representative Ed McBroom on, the chairman of the Oversight Committee that conducted these audits, these hearings. He said it in his own words, Brian. I'm going to post the podcast out there. Ed McBroom said that Jason Allen came to him and told him they were aware of the problems, they are fixing the problems, everything will, quote unquote, be fine. And it didn't happen. I'm sorry, but it doesn't get any more poignant than that. If the guy says they are aware of the problems, they're working on solving the problems, and everything will be fine, then I take him at his word, and then come to find out when the audit's done, they didn't fix it. I'm sorry, this is a major issue for this campaign. This is something that has got to be discussed, and Jason has got to be held accountable for it. He has got to answer this in detail. Don't put out no fluff press release. We are going to have answers on this whole thing. A complete, well-written, long explanation as to when you were appointed by Governor Snyder to Michigan Veterans Affairs, what your job responsibilities were, what was your involvement in the oversight of the VA home in Grand Rapids, what things were you aware of, and specifically, what did you personally do about it? And if you didn't do it personally, who did you delegate it to? Who did you make them account to you then and report back to you as to their progress? You want to be able to claim it on your resume, you want to point to it to try to earn votes from the veterans, then you need to answer the questions. I don't think it's too much to ask, Brian.
I'm surprised that there's not a bigger investigation. If you've got that much money, millions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse, that's what the report said. Where's Bill Schuette at? Throwing us an investigator in there saying, okay, we've got millions of dollars of fraud going on in abuse. Let's get to the bottom of this. There have got to be people that have to be held accountable for this. Are you seeing that?
I'm not seeing it from the Attorney General. I'm not seeing it from Governor Snyder's office. I know he's busy with the Flint water issue, but enough's enough on that. He has got to show some leadership on this, and he's got to fix the problem. And I know Bill Schuette is quite busy investigating other things as well, but I'm sorry. This waste, fraud, and abuse is something that they need to be held accountable for. Mm-hmm. And if there was criminal conduct on the implementation of that $5.2 million prescription program down there at that hospital, what happened? Did some employee take the drugs and sell them on the side? The veterans didn't get the drugs. What happened to them, Brian? We need to find out. Because unless you find out what the problems are, how are you going to fix them? And this audit clearly shows a lot of the problems, and Holly Hughes even said there will be changes and heads will roll. Who's been fired as a result of this? This is the end of June. This report was put out on February the 19th of this year. It's been over 4 months. I haven't heard of anybody getting fired down there.
And I'm surprised there's not been a follow-up to this. And a lot of times when you see a report come out like this that's this bad, mm-hmm. This is bad. As far as reports that I've seen that have come out, I've seen reports that have been a lot less, that have brought up a lot more scrutiny and follow-up, from people that would have, had that under their jurisdiction, saying, okay, now we got the report. Now we need to investigate this criminally. We're talking millions of dollars.
Right.
And again, as somebody that is under the thumb in various ways of Laura, if any of this happened in the private sector, heads wouldn't roll. People would be thrown in prison overnight.
Right.
I mean, you tell me a case where people die in a situation like this. Mm-hmm. Let's say at a hospital. You have a situation where people needlessly die. There wouldn't be a special investigation on this, and people wouldn't be going to jail?
Well, my first question on that point specifically was, where are the family members picking up the phone, 1-800-CALL SAM, and not filing some type of lawsuit against that VA hospital, that VA home down there? If my father or grandfather was neglected and abused in that home and passed away, I'd hire an attorney immediately to sue him. Mm-hmm. Get him into depositions. Get him into answering my attorney's questions. Okay, let's see if then Attorney General Bill Schuette, having to defend the state's agency at that point, would be forced to deal with this situation. Is that what it's going to take, Bill? Schuette? Are you going to have to be sued, the state of Michigan, we the people have to be sued by one of these family members for the way their family member was neglected and abused in this home before you'll be willing to step up and investigate? Because Brian, who ultimately would end up paying the lawsuit off?
Yeah, it would be the state of Michigan.
Taxpayers. Just more money that we'd have to throw at a problem because of their mismanagement and their oversight.
Here's a Facebook question that we have, or even comment.
Yep.
We could FOIA for the lawsuit information. There could be actions that have already taken place, just that they're done behind closed doors.
I don't think a lawyer that would be willing to take this case on would be silent. I think they would be in front of the microphones. I think the stories would be covered by this same Fox News agency down in Grand Rapids. If they filed a lawsuit, Brian, it's public record. These reporters down there have to surely know about it. You know what I'll do? After the show, I'll call this Fox News station down in Grand Rapids, and I'll ask for the girl that did the story, Erica Francis.
Okay.
I'll ask her to see if she's done a follow-up and has any lawsuits been filed. Maybe I can reach out to her. Maybe we can have her on the show tomorrow.
That'd be good. Yeah. I think this is a story I would like to... there's certain stories that kind of hit home more than others, and as this one unfolded, I'm just like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah.
And to see, to start out with Ed McBroom and in the way that you guys went back and forth, kind of, laying out what this is, and then to look it up. And what I did is when I was listening to you guys talk about it, I'm like, well, I need to get some more information on this. This didn't even hit MLive that I saw. It was a Grand Rapids post that I saw when I was starting to investigate it as you guys were talking about it. That's when I found the second link.
Right.
And I'm like, okay. And then I started reading it during the break going, there's a problem here. And then, the writing on this, again, it's a TV station, so you're not going to get a lot of verbiage on the story. It's just some brief information, then you've got to get the information out of the video clip.
Right.
And then you play the audio on that, and as it's getting deeper and deeper and they're laying out the details, 43% failure rate on just calls from rooms? I mean, could you imagine you're laying in a hospital bed and you're pushing the button for somebody to come to you because you need help? In over 43% of the time, somebody's not going to show up? That's what's going on here. Final segment when we return. Brian Summerfield, Trucker Randy, your Defending Fathers. Final segment of today's program, our Wednesday edition. Sometimes the Wednesdays can be a little wild and wacky. Boy, I didn't, when we started the show today, I didn't even get to the first story I had pulled up today.
You said it was going to be a wonderful Wednesday. It wasn't going to get wacky.
No, it didn't get wacky at all, did it?
It took a life of its own. We did not have control of the show, that's for sure. You know, and the thing of it is we had been talking about having Ed McBroom on for months. I mean, this was something that just, finally came together. I met him at the state convention when we got elected to be delegates and alternates to go to Cleveland. We were standing in line together, Brian, for about 15 minutes waiting to get our credentials to get into the room. And we were just standing there chit-chatting back and forth. What was that, April 8th? And he said, hey, you know what? We haven't had you on the show yet. We need to have you on. And you wanted to talk to him about daylight savings time, eliminating that and keeping our clocks exactly where they are right now. And, I've been hearing about this VA hospital, this home down in Grand Rapids, and I'm getting conflicting information. Was Jason Allen in charge back when these problems happened, or wasn't he? When was this audit done? When did Ed McBroom actually chair this Oversight Committee and create these investigations that led to the discovery and the audit in these reports? And then in February 19th, this story comes out of Fox 17 down in Grand Rapids, and it's like, okay, this is getting too many questions. I don't understand. I'm hearing from the campaign that he wasn't involved, he wasn't in charge, he wasn't in. Jason Allen wasn't in oversight of the hospital back when these problems occurred. Then I hear conflicting stories that in fact there was.
Mm-hmm. And again, I've heard some things behind the scenes on this, but very little. And not until you started, talking about it a little bit with Ed McBroom. Ed McBroom was one of them that served on this with Holly Hughes, correct?
Yes, they were on the committee together, and Ed was the chairman.
Mm-hmm.
And Holly is in this video clip that we posted.
So is Ed willing to take this to another level or the next step, or how does this work?
I'm going to have to reach out to him after the show. I was going to give him a call, thank him for coming on, but more importantly, ask him, so where are we going from here?
Mm-hmm.
Is the audit it? The findings have been done, and now he's leaving it up to Governor Snyder to run with it, to deal with it. Is his Oversight Committee going to stay engaged? Are they going to, have changes already been made? Who's been fired? What direction is it going? And have they made the steps necessary to fix these problems? So I'm going to follow up with him because, to be honest, I didn't fully expect him to say what he said. That Jason Allen told him 2 occasions, came to his office and said they're aware of the problems, they're taking care of it, everything will be fine. Not once, but twice. And then this is the result afterwards that comments were made to him by Jason Allen, is that this is what he found in this hearing, in this audit that took place. So we've got a lot more to investigate, and like I said, I'm going to reach out to that Fox News station down in Grand Rapids and see if I can talk to the reporter, and we'll follow the story and have more information for you on it tomorrow.
Yeah, I might have to drive over to Gaylor today and get into Tammy's stock of Excedrin that she buys by the 55-gallon drum. It was one of those shows for me today. I'm not going to lie; it truly was. Yep. And it's a matter of letting the truth be the truth be the truth. Get the facts out there. If Jason Allen truly has some responsibility to bear for this, then bear the responsibility. If he doesn't, then let's clear his name, and at least we know that if something comes up in either the primary or the general, that this has already been talked about, and we can counter it. Either way, we need to know the information. We need to know the facts. And again, this show does more to fight against waste, fraud, and abuse than any other show that I know of. And so, as we get into into this further, there needs to be more investigative on this as far as, again, if you're a doctor involved in any type of prescription malpractice at all, you're done. I don't care if it's a few $100s worth, but we're talking $5 million of prescription drugs that's either mismanaged or gone or, whatever.
Unaccounted for.
In that alone. I mean, let's face it, there's some things that you don't mess around with in this country. There's a reason why there's a Bureau of Tobacco, Alcohol, and Firearms. Those are the big three that you don't mess around with.
FDA, prescription drugs?
Yeah, and drugs is another one of those. That is all the time we have for today, and tell you the truth, today I'm glad this is all the time we have for today. I'm going to go lay down. I'm going to rest my head. We'll be back tomorrow with more Your Defending Fathers.